Nico, John, Devin. That's a Dom hand. Excellent. And then I'll send through the notes link. There you should go. So if somebody is willing to take notes, that would be awesome. So Kevin was going to give us an overview, but it's on of his presentation. He's given a presentation at BCTS. Is that this week or next week?
I think it's just this Thursday.
This Thursday, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but got a message, and he was saying he's not feeling so great today. So, yeah, hopefully he'll recover quickly, and we can go from there. I think he'll send through some slides at some point. But, yeah. Cool. So, do we want to start? Does anybody have quick updates, things you want to tell us about what you've been up to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could start. It's part of one of the items I added this morning, but it was really just about overhauling the organization of the SimPEG website. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can fill sort of the dead space left by Kevin today if we need to. And I mostly just wanted to show what I've done so far in Google Doc and really just gauge interest in terms of who wanted to be involved. So I've actually started making examples or sort of tutorials starting with models and mapping, and then I want to start making them for modeling and then showing off all the different inversion functionality. So yeah, I've got some stuff started on that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we can come back to that because I think there's lots going on with the docs. So we can dive in further for sure. Did anybody go to Sean's talk last week? I unfortunately had a meeting, so missed that, but anyone?
Yeah, we connected to the webinar.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was good. Like, it was a good overview of his workflow, how he does mag inversion as a consultant, what he takes into account, what you have to take care of or pay attention to.
And SimPEG got a shout out to Joseph, so that's pretty good. You put it on the front page.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
that's
Joseph.
pretty slick. Was there anything that you think we should follow up on, or any sort of interesting things to think about incorporating into SimPEG, or anything sort of based on his talk that we should be thinking about?
It was mostly workflows, right? It's like its own personal best practice.
Yeah.
What about that reweighting thing that he was doing at the end?
That's true.
That was kind of interesting, but I didn't quite understand. Like, yeah, I guess he was saying he was just playing around with it, and he was looking if there's any sources that people have tried it before. I can't remember. He was taking the observed minus the predicted, and then mapping his weights that way, but the difference.
That's right. I think. Yeah, it's kind of a reweighting.
Yeah.
After a few iterations.
But yeah, it looks like he did it after, like, he did a few iterations, checks things, and then keeps going. So it's not like every iteration, but yeah, that was kind of interesting.
It's true. It will be like good looking into it. I will add it.
Cool.
So that would be a directive, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Hey, how do you?
Oh, is it still striking out the?
Yeah, how do you unstrike?
Just add a bullet point above is probably easiest.
Yeah.
You can go in and like format the text, I guess. Format text. Yeah, that would unstrike it too.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone?
I'm still working on the example for the mesh refine.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time with VTKI with Bain last week to create a nice example, but yeah, I just didn't come around to finish it.
No worries.
The PR is really ready to go. Otherwise, right? I mean, I guess you still have a few comments, but it's passing all the tests. So.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
We can take a look at that then, or if there's a couple remaining items, we can maybe tackle those even today.
Yeah, let's merge it in because even Craig keeps bugging me about it, and we can bring the example in the second PR, I guess.
Okay. That brings up like a bit of an order of operations question, and this also maybe ties into the docs, so maybe this is worth going into now.
Order of operation? In what sense?
Because there's this pull request, so I can share my screen. Because I went through and like refactored the discretized docs, and I've showed you all this before, but now it's actually passing and I think basically ready to go. It shouldn't cause too much of a conflict, I don't think, with your PR, but there will be a bit to sort through.
Okay.
And I'm happy to do that. And we can take a look at this afterwards in terms of order of operations, Dom, but I think I can give a bit of an overview. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just make sure I lock the recording to my screen. Okay, so you can see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is pull request 134, and I think it's basically ready to go. So if somebody is willing to do a bit of a review, I would appreciate that. But I'll show you what this actually looks like. So actually, let me do two things. So I'll show you the current docs and then show the refactored version. And Devin, this I think is very much along the lines of what we could do for the SimPEG docs as well.
Yeah, I took a look at what you did with discretize.
Yeah, okay, so this one here on the left is the current state of the discretized docs. And then the one on the right is the refactored one. So if you look at master here versus repo cleanup is the name of the branch that's building this new one. So just separating out things based on like what are you using for getting started, what's a bit of a user guide. And so I have an issue going of like other things that we should actually include in the user guide. Because right now it's pretty light. But there's a lot of questions we get on like building operators. What does the curl do? What does the face divergence do? All those sorts of things. And so I actually think that basically for like every operator, we should think about having a quick user guide example on like what it is. So if we look at like, the tensor mesh, this is built from a Python script, which is kind of nice. So that you can actually download this as a notebook or as a Python script, similar to what we have for the examples, but meant to be a little more tutorial in nature. Yeah, so there's a couple of these that are in pretty good shape. Like the tensor mesh one, I think is pretty good, but the rest of these are actually like need some work. So if Devin, we can maybe chat about this too, is if you're interested in jumping into the discretized docs, I think now would be a really good time to get started on some of that. Especially because I think the API is a bit more stable than some of the stuff in SimPEG. I would like to get the simulation class up and running pretty soon, but it's of course not there, and that'll change some of the structuring of the examples. So we can go into that afterwards. Yeah, but the main things I wanted to just show with this pull request are like here the changes in organization. Actually, the way the API is built, I kind of quite like, because we have just like a high-level one-page overview of basically everything that's there. And then you can go in and you can click on the tensor mesh, for example, and then actually see the docs that are specific to the tensor mesh. And all of its properties and methods and all that jazz.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
The other thing that I changed, and we don't have to go into too much detail on this, but I do want to point it out, is the testing. So before, it was actually kind of unclear which version of Python we were testing on. Because we were installing Anaconda, it was always grabbing the latest. Even though we thought we were testing on Python 3.6, it would grab the latest Python 3 from Anaconda, which is actually 3.7. And so I've refactored some stuff just following what Leo does for Verde, which is one of the Fadiando packages. And basically split up our Travis file a bit more. Actually, let me show you. This is going to be confusing. So I'm just going to pull up the single Travis file. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay. So the way that this works is basically each bullet point here provides the description for one of the tests, one of the test suites that's triggered on Travis. So if I actually show you what Travis looks like, so here for this documentation cleanup pull request, we can see on the latest one, there is one named Python 2.7 base. This is exactly like, this is that test suite. So it's running on Linux with Python 2.7, and it's going to test the base directory. And so I know this is a bit more verbose than our previous Travis file, but I think it's a bit more clear. Is like, here we're explicit about which version of Python we're testing, which folder it's running, and all of that. So hopefully that's a bit cleaner and easier for us to maintain down the line.
And it all depends on the same YAML file for the dependencies, or can you specify like specific packages version?
We can specify specific package versions. So here, for example, we do the deploy to PyPI from the tree mesh testing branch. And so here I install an extra package on Conda. I install Twine because that is going to be what we do secure upload to PyPI. So if you wanted, like, we can install extra custom packages on a given test environment if we need to.
That's cool.
Yeah. So hopefully it doesn't have to get too fancy, but the option to do that is there.
Beautiful.
Cool. The only other thing, and there'll be a change that needs to propagate through on SimPEG with this, is that I lately did some reorganization of where the base classes live. So there's now a base directory in Discretize. So here, if we look at the code, so this is all the code, there is now actually a base directory where we have the base mesh and the base tensor mesh. This shouldn't change basically anything user-facing unless you were directly importing the base mesh, which you probably shouldn't be doing. Yeah, then it doesn't really change anything user-facing. It just does change a couple imports inside of SimPEG. So there'll be a change that follows this. Cool. I'll stop sharing my screen now. But does anybody have questions on that, or is somebody willing to take a look in the next week or so, so we can get this in? I mean, if somebody's willing to do it today, even, we can work on getting it in like sooner. But
I think it's definitely like a massive improvement over what we had before. So I don't mind like taking a look and giving any comments, and we could bring it in with maybe making adaptations in the future. But I mean, it looks significantly better than what we had before. I'm pretty happy. But I may have some stuff that we could do to further improve it if people wanted. So I'd be willing to look at it this week, and we could get it in.
That'd be awesome, Devin. And I've linked, like, in the issue, a couple issues that sort of say, here's some things that we need to do. So feel free to add to those, or if you want to flesh them out further, like, that'd be great.
Yep.
Cool. Any other questions on that?
No, so I guess SimPEG is me the same, but you haven't started yet. Is that what you're saying? Devin will take on.
Yeah. So Devin, do you want to give us an over? Do you want to take the wheel and give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, I was just going to go to the Google Doc and kind of go through some of that.
Sure, that'd be great.
We can do it here if you don't want to plug this up.
Yes. You go to Slack. I made or go into the meeting notes. There's the link to the Google Doc in there.
I'll drive here Slack.
Sweet. So I put it in here. Oops, I wanted to open it.
Can you just click on the link instead? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this was basically kind of looking at the highest level organization of SimPEG, and it was sort of inspired by the discretize stuff as well. Just being someone who's not maybe as experienced as a user as some of the other people, I guess I noticed that we want it to be easy for people to get started. And so, yeah, I kind of came in there with fresh eyes and thought maybe we could make some improvements to the website. And this is really related to things in issue 659 on the repository. So
one just like quick comment for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
The main URL for the SimPEG docs is actually docs.simpeg.xyz.
Ooh, okay.
And Rowan I talked to him this weekend, and he's we're gonna start sketching out like a light refactor of the top level site, like SimPEG.
Oh, yeah.
But just as a point of clarification.
Okay. Yeah, so first just kind of some comments on the website, how we have it now. We have a lot of sections at the highest level. So we've got a lot of good stuff in here, but it's not maybe parsed the best. And so I really like what we've done with the discretized repository and using yeah. Oh, you got this guy. Oh, much better. Yeah, having these sort of titles in here sort of parse things out. Yeah, so we want to know how we can organize things so that new users can sort of follow things in a linear fashion and go from novice to expert. And then also, how do we organize these things so that recurring visitors can find something particular right away? So that's sort of the approach that I was going to take. One thing we have is that the API section, we auto-generate the API, but it doesn't really have a consistent organization. So sometimes there's theory in the doc string, and sometimes it's in a particular geophysical method. Sometimes, yeah, it's auto-generated. So that isn't really consistent in here. So we have some questions. Do we want to, maybe for like the EM problem, do we want to, in the doc string, provide some kind of theory on how it's solved? That makes pages longer. Or do we want to have a separate area to put theory and make use of hyperlinks? So maybe, the API goes in its own section, and in the doc string, we could actually link that to a theory section in the website if you want to actually know how that was being done. So we can make use of a lot of these tools with the website design. Yeah, I think we're pretty happy with the API style, how we auto-generate that. I think what Lindsay showed in the discretize, having sort of that highest level and then being able to click on that and sort of see everything for a particular, I guess, class. That's pretty sweet. I'm pretty happy with that, and I think I'd like to use it. And then examples. So this really is our biggest teaching tool. And right now we have an example section, and we have all these thumbnails and all of this great stuff, but it's not really organized in a sort of a fashion where you go through tutorials and really learn how to become an expert SimPEG user. It's sort of you find a particular problem and you can use that example. But if you want to kind of generally know how SimPEG works. I don't know if they're the most successful. So I've kind of been working on some of those, mostly started with making models and mappings and showing that. Yeah, so I think we want to start with a structure that's pretty similar to what we have for discretize. We'll kind of decide what we think is the best, but I do like the getting started section. I found that to be pretty good to, getting things set up on my computer. I thought that was really quite good. And then having examples. So have sort of examples for forward simulations. It's one thing people really want to use SimPEG for, is to predict data for a particular scenario, and then try and show off our functionality for inversion. And then have the API documentation be separate, and then have a section for theory. So, how do we discretize the system to be solved for the forward problem? Those kinds of details. How is the source term on the right-hand side generated? All that theory. When you actually want to know how it's being done, and those details, they should exist somewhere. And so I think what we can do is in the API or in the doc strings, when that gets auto-generated, I think we'd be able to auto-generate it so that when it shows up on the website, there's a link, and that link could go to the theory section. So it'd be readily available, but it wouldn't be making these pages very, very long. So that was my sort of proposal for organization, and I think we can kind of take the best things from what we've done with the discretized website and take the best things out of what I've got here and come up with something that should be pretty good. Yeah, so I mostly wanted to figure out, get some comments on this, and then figure out who is interested in being a part of it. If it's only a couple people, then we can get started right away, but I didn't want to leave anyone out if they were interested in being a part of it. Yeah.
Sounds great, man. Yes.
I'm the guy, just go for it.
Well, I would think if you start with discretize and with Lindsay, help her out with this, right? Because it's already nicely formatted, and then after this, we can, I don't know. What do you think, Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think this is looking really solid, Devin. And the one thing that I was thinking, well, two things, I guess, actually, is one, I think starting in discretize might be nice because it's like it's a smaller package. And so we can sort of play around with like how much detail is needed in like the user guide versus perhaps a theory section, because we could go a bit more involved on the finite volume side of things if that's needed. We also could try and do a good job of finding appropriate references and things like that. Like there's a lot of things where we can point people to some of Eldad's stuff. And so we don't need to reinvent those types of things. The other thing is, like, I think as we do this, it might be useful to kind of create, and this could be its own like SimPEG meta repo, but a few guidelines that are helping us like scope what goes in each part of the documentation. So basically saying stuff like the API documentation really should be code usage only, not theory. Like I totally agree that that's a reasonable thing. And it might be nice for us to just kind of like scope, like have a document where we scope these kinds of things. Same thing with sort of like the separation between perhaps an examples gallery and the user guide. So where I'm thinking of this is based on like Leo's work in Fadiando in Verde. I'll just show you a quick, I think we've looked at this before.
Mike.
Yeah, I think what you have as user guide is basically what I have as examples and tutorials.
Yeah, but I think there's potentially, we can think of examples slightly differently. And I'll show you this, I guess, in the way that the discretized docs are organized too, but it's very much inspired by what Leo did. Mm-hmm. The gallery is sort of like our examples right now, where it's just like, here's a collection of things that you can do with this software package.
Yeah.
And then the user guide is much more targeted, like, here is how I go and sample data, or sorry, how do we go and do trend estimation? So it's much more targeted around solving a particular problem. So I think there's value in having both. It's just like a collection of examples that solve some problems, and then a user guide that actually like walks you through step by step.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of having something fancy that's like, you know, some really high level applied problems to really show off what we can do. But I also like having like a tutorial based thing where you start off really basic and explain what each thing is in comments, and say, okay, I need to make I got a mesh, I need to make a model, I need to make a mapping, and then, okay, I need to forward model some data, and like, what am I doing? So I'm okay with adding 2 different sections, but I really think there's an importance of having some really low level basic stuff where you can start.
Yeah, completely agree.
Both are structured the same, eh? And in terms of having like the thumbnail gallery versus the shorter one, it's both the same Python syntax, right?
It's the same Python syntax. There's a slight distinction in like how it's generated, which just changes like where we store them. So I can, like, within the discretize reorganization, there's 2 folders. I'm just going to pull up. One sec. Okay. So if we actually look at the discretize repo, there's one folder called examples, and that'll generate like the gallery. And then there's one called tutorials, and those actually are going to be used to generate just like the single script. So they both are following the exact same like Python syntax or Python file structure, but just they're stored in different places because we like put them in different places on the website.
Yeah, with the header, with the hash header and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so easy, right? It's basically like
yeah, that's exactly how I've written the examples I have now, because like I've made stuff to auto generate. So it's those examples will generate. Perfect. Yeah.
That's excellent. Devin, have you put those? Are they on a branch somewhere, or you just have them kicking around at the moment?
Right now, I have them kicking around. So I think one reason I wanted to figure out how many people were interested and was that, I mean, if I was the only one who really wanted to take the ball and run with it, then I would make a branch and I'd just go for it and start doing it. But I wanted to open the floor up to people if they wanted to have some input.
Start populating and we'll do the reviews.
Yay.
I think, like, in terms of order of operations, we might want to restructure things first and then start putting them in.
Yeah, and discretize too. We can start with discretize, and I think once we're happy with the organization of that website, that becomes the template for the SimPEG website.
Yeah, and then too, like what we can do, and I think this would be a nice way to try and do it for the discretize doc too, and this enables multiple people to contribute if they want to, is just basically do like almost one script or one edition at a time. So they're really lightweight, quick pull requests. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to get sort of maybe a pull request that refactors everything to a final form, and once that's done, then it starts to be this thing of let's add this and let's add this and let's add this.
Yeah.
And the first thing is, okay, let's take everything we have now, because we have all the information. It's just we think that there's a better way to parse it and organize the website.
Yeah.
And I think we could do that, merge it in so that exists, and then start going, okay, how do we go and fill everything in so it's all pretty? And we have, comprehensive examples and all that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Andrea, if you're willing to jump in, I'd be really curious to get your thoughts too, as somebody who's coming, like actually really wanting to use SimPEG and probably trying to sort through our docs right now.
Yeah, actually, so I agree with a lot of the things that you're saying, Devin, right?
Yep.
Okay. I've had a lot of issues with trying to figure out how exactly to use some of how to use the survey commands because I'm not entirely sure exactly what order, how, what type they need to be in. Like, I mean, I can see that type, like list, but exactly how it's supposed to work within calling the survey function, that's something that I've been having an issue with, and having like a low level, this is, so you want to do this, how would you start, would be incredibly useful.
Yeah, well, that sounds good, because I'm not, out of all the people in this room, I'm not the most gifted programmer, so I'm sort of at that level of trying to bring it to the people that are sort of natural coders.
Another thing that would be super useful is that, like you were saying, with using hyperlinks within there, and having like sources, receivers, like every single section that you go, like say you start at the sources, doing again hyperlink headers, sources, receivers, and that way you could jump back and forth, because I ended up having to scroll through several different ways to try to figure out exactly what I need in order to build what I'm actually trying to figure out. So that would be actually really useful too. If I was a little bit more understanding of SimPEG, I would totally be willing to help with this. But if I can get caught up, then yeah.
And what type of problems are you solving? Is like, are you doing potential field stuff, for EM stuff, for everything?
So right now I'm trying to do a grounded source, frequency domain EM, and also a magnetotelluric problem. So, and I'm looking in actually trying to do an anisotropic case for both of those, which we don't have documentation there for that yet. So, so I've been having a little bit of issues. One, learning how to use the meshes, even though there's a great example, I had a hard time learning that breaking it up into like the 3 boxes that's how that works. So it took me a while I just had to play around with it for a little bit. So, but having like a more detailed, like low-level description of this is what's happening.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't mind keeping in touch, because once we have the organization of this all merged, then I'm sort of looking for who's the loudest person saying, I want this kind of a tutorial. So
yeah.
If you're the loudest one, you're going to get all the tutorials.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I can tell you exactly where I'm having problems, and any suggestions I have for sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
And if you have, we can circulate the links for the issues with respect to documentation, but like on the GitHub issues. But one thing that would be extremely useful, sort of even as we're refactoring things, is if you're also just willing to sort of keep track of questions that you have or things that are confusing, because as we refactor the documentation, it's helpful to have in mind, like, we need to make sure that we can actually solve these real questions that users have. So if you have like a running list somewhere, or are willing to just jump in on those issues, that would be really valuable.
Yeah, I've been keeping a running like thought process and questions document, so I can organize that into something a little more reasonable, and send that your way.
That'd be really useful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can put that in the SimPEG general.
Sure, that would be great. Awesome. Well, okay, then to move forward, if we have some action items. So Devin, are you willing to take a look at the discretize pull request?
Yeah, so I got some GIF tool stuff I got to finish up today, and then tomorrow I can look at the discretize pull request, and then once we get that in, maybe I'll work on an example for, I guess, Octree mesh creation, sort of similar to what I've done with making models.
Yeah, so Devin will finish my example.
Well, Devin, what we can do too is if you want to connect either tomorrow or Thursday, even just like for a brief chat to sort of go over what's in there and like how to proceed, just ping me on Slack and we can find a time. The afternoons are really busy, but the mornings I've got a little more flexibility.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, I'm leaving Thursday afternoon to go to Victoria, but then I'm more or less around forever. So.
Okay.
You'll find me. Okay. Sounds good.
Any other like topics, things that people want to chat about, or things related to the docs that you want to bring up?
This last week or so, I've been working quite a bit on trying to test like the grounded source. Like I think it's called like a line source. Mm-hmm. And we already had it set up for the tensor mesh, but we didn't have it set up for the octree mesh.
Yeah.
So I kind of went in and started a new branch and wrote some little tests and just kind of rewrote basically the function that went in and found the edges that your line source is passing through, and then used the little integration function to kind of integrate that source kind of along the wire path to the appropriate edges. So I've kind of rewritten a function that'll do that, and I've been trying to test it just to make sure that we're getting kind of good agreement between the tensor and the octree. And then I've also been testing it against the E3D code, the UBC code.
Oh, nice.
And I talked with Devin, and he suggested that we write like a little analytic that just kind of numerically integrates like a horizontal electric dipole kind of along the wire path to simulate a finite length wire. And so we have a little analytic that we can compare to those ones as well. So I've just been kind of playing around with that to try to make sure that things are behaving reasonably and trying to figure out kind of where is the best place to be putting my source and my receivers and things like that. Because, well, I found basically that the way we do some of our interpolation, especially for the receivers, like the point receivers, is not quite as robust as the way that the UBC E3D code seems to do it. So like it's really beneficial, if, for example, if I have my receivers kind of within a cell or at a cell center versus on an edge or right on a node, especially if those receivers are somewhat close to the wire path of my source. So I've just been kind of testing a whole bunch of things and trying to figure out kind of how I'm going to set this up and kind of from a numerical standpoint, how we can get good accuracy out of it at the end. And so there's one thing that I was talking with Joe about a week or so ago, and that was for kind of the line source function. Right now, it's only really working if your source wire path falls within kind of a uniform region of the octree mesh that has your smallest cell size. If you have cell size changes along that wire path, or you don't have your kind of base cell size in that region, you're going to run into problems. But Joe wrote up a quick function, or at least the template for a function that should help us generalize that pretty easily. And so I need to just touch back with him again, basically, and see where this function was that he had kind of showed me an example of, and if it's kind of in a usable state where I can start trying to test it out a little bit more and trying to integrate it into this function. But the basic stuff is, I think, there, and I think we're getting overall pretty good agreement with the analytic and with the UBC code, as long as we're careful with where we put things.
Nice. Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the UBC code doesn't even let you define where, like, outside the origin of an octree mesh. Is that true?
Sorry, can you say that one more time? You broke up a little bit.
The UBC code, if you have an octree mesh, I believe that the wire path has to be in the core region of the mesh. Is that true?
I would say...
I think so, probably, but...
It wouldn't be allowed to be in the padding.
Right, but even, I don't, like, my impression was, and I could be wrong about this, but I thought the code would error at you if you tried to put a wire path like across cell sizes that were changing.
Yeah, I guess I've never had to deal with it because usually if you start with the utilities and you have your survey file, then you're going to generate the octree mesh based on transmitters and receivers.
Yeah, but I mean, if we can, if Joe's done all this work, it would be really cool to be able to compare actually and like see if we can get reasonable accuracy, even if you are changing cell sizes.
Yeah. And I think he'll be able to write just a couple little functions that'll like easily expose the edges for a given cell instead of because like right now I'm basically using like distance calculations based on like the pierce point of the wire path or like the cell center. And I'm using kind of these distance measures to figure out which edges things need to be assigned to. So it's probably not the most like efficient way of doing it. I think there's probably, with a couple of functions that Joe said he could easily write, I think we should be able to make it just more efficient and more streamlined as well. So we should be able to, both improve the performance maybe and just hopefully generalize it too. So.
Excellent.
I guess that's a refine that would be that we're missing, right? To refine on the line. If you define 2 points to refine between the two.
Yeah, that could be really useful. Yeah, because if you knew your wire path, you could just refine your mesh along that wire path, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. Yeah, that could be really.
I think
Yeah.
Because we have points, we have a surface, we have a box. All
Yeah.
One more just like quick request, and this is somewhat related because I was just about to ask you if you have that on a branch somewhere. But we also have like, I think there's something like 40 branches of SimPEG right now, which is a lot. And a lot of them are actually quite stale, as in like, or there's 37 and some of them are like a year old. And so if people would just be willing to take a look here, just at the SimPEG branches and whatever is yours, and if it's like I went through and deleted everything that could safely be deleted in the sense that the branch was not a head at all. So like all of the changes had either been merged, like all the changes had been merged in. I deleted any of those branches, but there's a handful where I think like people started exploring an idea and then maybe stopped and moved on, and maybe we implemented it in a different way. And I did not delete any of those. So if you have a look at like what is your branches, and if there's something that you haven't updated in 3 years and you know that you're not planning to touch it again, if you could just delete it, that would be great.
Okay. I say yes, and then I won't do it.
Then I'll just start deleting your branches, Dom.
I have some good ideas in there.
I would not do that to you. I wouldn't do that. Well, that's cool, Mike. Feel free to like, if you have an example or anything like that that you want to share around on Slack. I'm sure people would be excited to see. I certainly would.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Any other items, things that people want to bring up? We have 10 more minutes or so.
I've been trying to get those sensitivities to output, but it seems okay. I don't like it's. There a couple of people told me you used problem at get JTJ-diag. What is that supposed to be an inversion problem or survey problem or problem DC?
Problem DC.
Okay, so problem DC, mine anyways, the one that I took from master doesn't have that. So when you try to do it from the update sensitivity or like the preconditioner side of things, it looks for that attribute. If it doesn't have it, it just gets J, and then like all my RAM goes. So is it that I'm doing it after the fact?
It's probably because Sagi never brought it down. It's probably still sitting on his DC.
Okay.
I thought he did bring everything in, but
I would have sworn I'd used that too.
Get the gauge JTJ-diag, right?
Yeah, I think I used that. Did you even choose like what, like how you're gonna? Oh no, maybe I'm thinking about the approximate one that Lindsay wrote.
Yeah, because there's a util that'll do that.
Oh, utility?
No, we'll look it up now.
Oh, okay.
It has to be on the it would have to be on the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I tried to write my own, and that was a disaster as well. Okay, I don't quite know exactly what.
What about the SP? Because it might be on the SP side.
The SP side. No.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought I looked in that, but I was on. It depends on what branch. I went to his Spectre or SP. I can't remember what it was called, but I didn't notice it there. But
is that for the sensitivity weighting?
No, the sensitivity matrix. One of the clients just wants the matrix to go.
It would be the same. It would be the same.
Yeah, because Sarah, I think she's working from the master branch of SimPEG, and she's using sensitivity weighting for RTC programs.
So she has get GTJ.
So should be.
So I followed it though through the directive, and it has like the get JTJ.
But that's going to be the problem.
But yeah, then it looks for it. If the problem has it, and if the problem doesn't, it just goes right to get J, and then it generates it from the full matrix.
One thing we could do actually. Which directive is this?
It was in update your sensitivity weighting. It was in there, but literally I'm just trying to get the sensitivity matrix. That's just where I've traced it through and found that it leads. It isn't in the problem that I have.
So you want J, or you want the diagonal of J?
The diagonal, yeah. Just yeah.
And Ceylon.
Yeah. It could be that you have something in the in the directive, like you have the initialization, and that does something special, and then the.
No, but we wrote it so that if, like John said, if JTJ diag exists, then it picks it up. Otherwise.
So this is the directive update sensitivity weighting, and then when you call get JTJ diag, it looks to see if a problem has it, but then if it doesn't, it just goes right to get J, and that's.
And you went to your problem, it's not there.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask.
Go to problem DC. I got get J back, JT back _ JT back.
Okay. And then we should take a look at that if you want, even after the meeting.
Yeah. For sure.
We can add it. Yeah, because it's technically the same as get J, but you just sum it instead of stacking your rows.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. We'll look into it.
In that directive too, it might actually be worth adding the step that actually just estimates if the problem doesn't have a JTJ, using the util that estimates it.
Just estimate it.
Yeah. But that's separate from your client who actually wants the
he wants to look at the sensitivity matrix. He loved the inversion that I gave him that we gave him out of SimPEG.
That's good.
Nice. Now he just wants to see the sensitivity.
For some reason.
Yeah, it's like, oh, geez. Okay.
He knows what he's doing. He's asking for it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool.
That's it for us, I think.
Yeah, maybe just to mention this as the last one. So I think everybody that submitted something for IUGG got his abstract accepted. So we're gonna be, just to mention that we're gonna be a good group of SimPEG people at the IUGG in July.
Excellent.
When is that? July what?
From the 8th to the 18th of July.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's really a long conference. I've never been to a conference that's more than a week long before.
That's crazy.
Where is it? It's
Montreal.
In Montreal.
You coming, Lindsay?
Yep, I'll be there.
Yeah, and Sogi is coming too.
Yeah, thanks, Sibo. I'm glad everybody got accepted. That's gonna be a fun conference. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and huge thanks, Devin, for investing all of this effort into organizing the docs. I'm really excited about where all this is headed.
Sounds good.
Cool. We'll be in touch this week, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining, Andrea.
Yeah, of course. I hope to keep coming to more.
Good to have you. See ya.
Bye.